The night they told me I was nothing but a mouth to feed, I stopped being their mother. That's the sentence that has echoed in my head ever since, louder than the clink of silverware, sharper than the knife Samantha used to cut her overcooked meatloaf. We were at the dinner table, the four of us, me, my son Jason, his wife Samantha, and my grandson. The air smelled of peas boiled too long and the faint sourness of resentment. Samantha's voice sliced through the room. You eat but don't help. Maybe you should take the hint and get out before I have to kick you out. The words didn't tumble. They fell like stones, heavy and deliberate. I froze, my fork suspended midair. I expected Jason to defend me, to say something, anything. Instead, he lowered his head, kept chewing, and let the silence swallow me whole. My grandson's eyes darted between us, wide and confused. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the weight. Children always do. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't tell them how my back aches at night, how my hands throb from arthritis, how I still try. Still fold laundry when I can, still scrub when my body allows, still cook when I have the strength. I didn't remind Jason how many times I sacrificed my own meals so he could have seconds when he was a boy. Instead, I set down my fork and began clearing the plates. Dignity. That was the only thing left I could carry without breaking. That night I lay awake in the guest room, which was nothing more than a converted storage closet. One small bed. No closet. A window too high to look out of. The fan above clicked with every turn. From the living room came the muffled sound of laughter. Samantha's laugh, Jason's laugh. My laugh was not invited. And in the darkness a cold voice whispered inside me. You've been fading for years. Tonight only proved it. I thought of the past because that's what old women do when the present feels unbearable. I thought of my husband, sick and slowly dying, and how I fed him spoon by spoon until the end. I thought of Jason as a boy, when I worked double shifts at the dry cleaner so he could have notebooks and shoes. I thought of the nights I stayed up sewing his uniform buttons, the afternoons I cheered from the bleachers though I could only afford a seat in the back. And now? Now I was disposable. I didn't leave the next morning. Not yet. Instead, I made coffee like always, folded laundry, picked up toys from the stairs so no one would trip, repaired a button on my grandson's jacket. My silence was my answer. 2 days later, they packed their bags for a weekend trip. A family getaway, they called it. Family, but not me. Jason avoided my eyes. Samantha smiled too sweetly. That was when I folded my own life into a single suitcase. Few clothes, documents, my rosary, and one leather-bound notebook my husband gave me long ago. I placed the house key on the kitchen table next to a folded dish towel, freshly washed. My last act of service. The bus ride to the care home felt endless, every bump pressing my knees deeper into ache. The building was plain, the paint peeling, but it was clean. Didn't smell like despair. The woman at the desk asked me to fill out a form. She didn't ask why I was there. Maybe she already knew. That night I sat on the narrow bed, staring at the shadow of a tree outside the window. For the first time the thought crept in, maybe I am a burden. Maybe I really am just someone who eats. That thought hollowed me out. But then something stirred. A voice I hadn't heard in years. A voice that said, what if they're wrong? The next morning I called James, my husband's oldest friend, our lawyer once upon a time. His voice was rougher, older but steady. Do you remember the house deed? I asked. Silence. Then yes. I remember everything about that day. 3 days later I was in his office. The same dusty shelves, the same smell of leather and old paper. He slid a folder across the desk, his hand almost reverent. I opened it. There it was. My name. The house. Signed over to me in 1994 by my husband, weeks after his diagnosis. My eyes blurred but my hands were steady. All these years they thought I lived in their house. But the truth was simple, printed in black ink. It was mine. Why didn't you ever tell them? James asked. I shook my head. Because I thought they'd always remember who I was. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I left his office with that folder pressed to my chest like armor. For the first time in decades I felt something shift inside me. Not revenge. Not fury. Balance. Because I wasn't just someone who ate. I was the woman who held the deed. And they had no idea. I didn't sleep that night. The papers lay on the bed beside me, their edges glowing faintly in the lamplight. like they carried their own fire. I kept turning the pages, tracing my husband's shaky signature, the notary stamp, my name typed in bold letters. My house. All this time, my house. For years, Samantha had sighed every time I touched the thermostat, rolled her eyes when I forgot to rinse a pan, muttered under her breath when I left a light on. "It's not a hotel," she once hissed. The words stung then, but now? Now they tasted different. Because it had never been her hotel. It had been my home. And she never even knew. That realization didn't come with joy. It came with grief, with the sick weight of wasted years. I could have spoken up. I could have claimed my place at that table without apology. But I didn't. I thought love was enough. I thought my silence would be read as sacrifice, not weakness. I was wrong. James poured me tea the next day in his office, the way he always had when he and my husband sat across from each other discussing wills and mortgages. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I stared at the steam rising from the cup. "I don't know yet. But I can't unknow this." He nodded slowly, like a priest hearing a confession he couldn't absolve. "Take your time." But time was something I had already given too much of. Back at the care home, I folded the papers neatly into my notebook, between the pages where I had once scribbled grocery lists and prayers. I looked around my small room, the thin curtains, the dresser that stuck when I pulled the drawers, the faint smell of bleach, and for the first time I didn't see exile. I saw possibility. The others at the home didn't ask why I was there. We all carried our secrets like bruises under clothing. But Helen, sharp-tongued, pink ribbons on her walker Helen, looked at me one afternoon over weak tea and said, "You've got something brewing behind those eyes. Spill it." I almost laughed. I found out something I thought was gone. Something that changes everything. Helen raised her eyebrows. "Then don't sit on it too long. Opportunity has a way of souring if you let it sit." Her words echoed through me. I knew she was right. A week later, Jason called. His voice was casual, too casual. "Mom, Samantha says you left some of your things. Do you want us to box them up?" I almost told him then. Almost said, "You're living in my house. Every nail, every shingle, every brick was signed to me before you ever moved your things in." But I bit my tongue. "Not yet. Throw them out," I said instead. "Nothing I need." The silence that followed was long enough for me to hear his confusion, maybe even guilt. But he didn't say anything. After I hung up, I walked to the window and stared at the parking lot, cracked with weeds. I had two choices: go back and demand respect, or let the silence grow until it devoured me. Neither felt right. That night, I opened the notebook again, not to look at the deed, but at the pages I hadn't touched in years. I flipped back through decades of scribbles, Jason's first tuition payment, the months I covered rent when his hours got cut, the medical bills I paid in secret. Thousands of dollars, each one tucked away like a prayer no one ever thanked me for. And then it hit me. All those years I thought I was just keeping track of life. But I had been writing my own proof. Proof of love. Proof of sacrifice. Proof of worth. I didn't need Jason to say it. The pages already screamed it for me. 3 days later, I was back in James's office. He raised an eyebrow as I placed the notebook on his desk, open to the deed. "I want to sell it," I said. My voice was steady. James leaned back, studied me for a long moment. "Are you sure? Once it's done, there's no going back." "I'm sure. I want it clean. No arguments. No begging. They'll find out in the mail." He nodded. "I'll handle it." As he began pulling forms from his drawer, I felt something loosen in my chest. For years, my worth had been measured in chores done, meals cooked, usefulness. Now it would be measured in ink, in decisions, in finality. When I left his office that day, the sky was heavy with rain. A bus hissed by, spraying water across the sidewalk, but I didn't flinch. I felt untouchable, wrapped not in vengeance but in certainty. Back at the care home, Helen asked what made me smile. "Justice," I said softly. It wasn't until weeks later, after the papers were signed, after the realtor's handshake, that I realized what I had done. The house was no longer mine, but it was no longer theirs either. The letter would arrive any day now. Certified mail, official, undeniable. And when it did, when Samantha opened that envelope and her smug certainty cracked in half, they would know the truth. I wasn't just someone who ate. I was the woman who held the deed. and I had just signed it away. That night, I lay in my narrow bed at the care home and whispered to myself, let them call me evil. Let them call me heartless. At least this time they'll remember me. The rain tapped against the window, steady as a heartbeat. Somewhere down the hall, Helen was humming to herself. And I closed my eyes, waiting. Because the storm I had unleashed was already on its way to their doorstep. The phone rang before sunrise. I knew it was them before I even lifted the receiver. My chest tightened, my breath caught. And for a split second I thought of letting it ring. Letting the voicemail take the brunt of their rage. But I didn't. I wanted to hear it. Mom! Jason's voice cracked through the line, jagged with panic and fury. What the hell did you do? I closed my eyes, savoring the sound of his panic like a bitter medicine I knew I needed. I did what I should have done a long time ago, I said softly. Samantha's voice cut in, shrill tight, like glass about to shatter. Are you out of your mind? You sold the house? Our house? Correction, I whispered, my house. It was always mine. The silence on the other end was so heavy I could almost feel the static pressing against my ear. Then Jason's breath came hard, uneven. You've ruined us, he said. Do you understand? We had plans. Plans that didn't include me, I interrupted, my voice rising for the first time in years. Plans that made me a burden. A stranger in my own home. Mom, he snapped. You could have talked to us. No, I said, sharp, final. I did talk. For years. With silence. With sacrifice. And none of you listened. For a moment, all I heard was Samantha's muffled sobs, Jason trying to calm her. But I knew the truth. He wasn't calming her. He was terrified. Because their castle had crumbled with one envelope. When I hung up, my hands shook so violently I had to press them into my lap to stop the trembling. I wanted to cry, to scream, to collapse. But instead I sat very still, staring at the phone. I wasn't weak anymore. The fallout came fast. That week, Jason showed up at the care home. He didn't even call ahead. I found him in the lobby, pacing like a trapped animal, his hair wild, his tie half loosened. Mom, please, he begged when he saw me. We can fix this. Tell me you didn't really sell it. I studied him carefully, the man I had raised, the man whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose nightmares I had chased away with stories. And I saw not my son but a boy again, terrified, desperate, powerless. It's done, I said. Irrevocable. His eyes filled with tears, and for a heartbeat I wanted to reach out, to wipe them away like I had when he was 5. But then his jaw hardened, and the tears turned into fury. You betrayed me, he hissed. You betrayed your family. Something inside me snapped. No, Jason, I said, my voice low, shaking. You betrayed me. You let her push me aside. You let me rot in here while you lived off what wasn't yours. You forgot who built that home. His face went red, his hands clenched into fists. Do you have any idea what you've done to us? Yes, I said. And I turned my back. He left without another word, the slam of the door echoing down the sterile hallway. Helen was waiting for me outside the dining room, her eyes glittering with curiosity. Well, she asked. They know, I whispered. And the war has started. The calls didn't stop. Samantha's voicemails grew more venomous by the day. Threats of lawyers, accusations of dementia, even the promise to have me declared unfit. Everyone will know you've lost your mind, she sneered in one message. You'll be nothing but a joke. But instead of fear, her words lit a fire in me. Because if she thought I was crazy, then maybe she underestimated me again. And that was her mistake. At night I sat by the window, staring at the parking lot lights glowing like faint stars. I wondered if I had gone too far. If maybe vengeance had consumed me more than love had guided me. But then I remembered the way Samantha used to shove my plate aside at dinner, the way Jason avoided my eyes when I asked to stay longer. No, this wasn't vengeance. This was balance. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived for me. The envelope was thick, expensive, embossed with a law firm's seal. Helen spotted it before I did. Looks like trouble, she smirked, sliding it across the table. My hands trembled as I opened it. Words swam in front of me. Petition, capacity hearing, guardianship. They were trying to strip me of control, to prove I wasn't competent, to claw back what I had taken from them. For a moment the room tilted. My chest tightened, and I had to grip the edge of the table just to steady myself. Helen's hand touched mine. "Don't let them scare you," she said. I swallowed hard, folded the letter neatly, and slid it back into the envelope. "If they want a fight," I whispered, "they'll get one." The hearing was set for next month. James met me the day after I received the papers. "They're going to argue you weren't of sound mind," he said grimly. "They'll drag every slip, every mistake, every forgetful moment into the light." "I'm not afraid," I lied. But inside I was. Because I knew I wasn't perfect. I forgot things sometimes. I stumbled over words. My hands shook. And I knew Samantha would use every crack in me to tear me apart. Still, I looked James in the eye and said, "Let them try." He nodded slowly. "Then we prepare." That night, as I lay in bed, the fear settled deep in my stomach. But there was something else too, something stronger. Resolve. For the first time in years, I wasn't the silent woman who swallowed her pain. I was the woman who signed her name and set the storm in motion. And storms don't retreat. They rage. As I closed my eyes, I could almost hear Samantha's voice in the wind outside the window, shrill and furious. But this time I whispered back, "Come and get me." The summons felt heavier than paper. It felt like a stone I had to carry in both hands, one labeled guardian, the other labeled ward. I set it on the nightstand and stared at it until the edges blurred. James came to Haven House the next morning. He didn't sit. He prowled, reading glasses down his nose, jacket off, tie loose. "We're not waiting for their story to define you," he said. "We build ours." "What does that look like?" I asked. He ticked off pieces on his fingers. "Capacity evaluation from your doctor. Statements from staff here. The banker. The deed history. Your notebook." My notebook. I felt my spine straighten. "That's personal. So is a courtroom that tries to turn you into a shadow," he said gently. "It won't leave this case. But it will tell the judge the years you carried without asking for applause." I stared at the tea in my cup until the steam faded. Then I nodded. "Fine. We used the truth." We started small. Dr. Patel at the clinic, the one who never talked down to me, who let me finish a sentence before she typed, ran the tests. Word recall. Clock drawing. Orientation. My hands trembled, but my mind did not crack. When we were done, she folded her stethoscope and smiled. "You are forgetful like any person your age," she said. "You are not incompetent. I'll write it plainly." At the bank, David, gray suit, careful eyes, the man who had watched me dismantle the trap, printed his internal memo. "Breach indicators," he called them. "Unverified signatures. Attempts to limit notifications. We flagged it after you raised concern. If I'm called, I'll testify." Haven House gave statements too. Helen signed hers with a flourish. "Ruth cooks half the common meals and calls bingo like a Vegas pro," she joked, then turned serious. "She pays her bills on time. She remembers our medications better than the nurses." The staff added their own. "On time. Clear. Kind." I didn't ask Roland, but he dropped off a note in his crooked block letters. "She saved me from sleeping in my truck. Anyone who calls her unfit never met her stew." We photocopied my notebook. Page after page. Not because the judge needed to know what a toothbrush and rent money cost across 30 years, but because I did. I needed to see my life lined up without apology. We put the copies into a thin blue folder. James labeled it history. The night before the hearing, I sat on the narrow bed and placed the summons next to my rosary, next to a photo of my husband squinting into the sun on our old porch steps, paint chips in his hair. He would laugh at all this, I whispered to the picture. He'd say, "You two always wanted a project. Look what you built." My hands were steady when I slid the rosary back into its pouch. Morning came too soon. I dressed slowly. Charcoal skirt, white blouse, the cardigan with the mended elbow. I pinned my wedding band to the inside hem of my pocket. I wanted him near my pulse. James arrived at 8 on the dot. He looked at my shoes and nodded. "Good," he said. "You'll stand a long time, and I don't want you wobbling because of fashion." We said little in the car. The courthouse loomed like a stern teacher. Old stone and narrow windows, steps that forced your body into its climb. My breath came short at the top, but I refused the arm James offered. Not because of pride, I said, but because of posture. He smiled. The courtroom smelled like polish and paper. A few pews of strangers waited with their own private storms. The judge was a woman with hair the color of wet iron and a gaze that reminded me of our old principal, the one who hated excuses but loved fairness. The clerk read our case number. A young lawyer I didn't recognize slid into the seat beside Jason and Samantha. She wore a shine on her heels that said new, and a jaw set like a lock. I didn't look at my son until I had to. When I did, he flinched and looked away. Samantha didn't flinch. She stared through me, smile tight and righteous, like a woman in a church pew who's certain God is seated exactly where she is. Petitioners allege diminished capacity and financial exploitation. The judge read. The words stung even though I'd heard them already. Respondent denies. We will proceed. Their young lawyer went first. She painted me with little brushes. An elderly woman confused by complex paperwork, easily manipulated, easily distressed. She introduced the forged power of attorney as if it were fact. This document, she said, holding it up like gospel, represents what Ms. Jordan intended before she became unmoored. Objection, James said, rising gently. Assumes facts not in evidence. We challenge the authenticity of that document, Your Honor. Sustained, the judge said. You may proceed, counselor, but carefully. They called Samantha. She took the stand like she was stepping onto a stage. Hand raised, oath spoken. Eyes shimmering with the wetness that comes easily to those who've practiced in mirrors. We tried everything, she said. She forgets appointments. She leaves the stove on. She once wandered into the yard and didn't know how to get back in. I kept my face still. I could have said, the stove has automatic shut-off, you bought it. I could have said, your gate locks from the outside. But my time would come. Let her paint. She became paranoid, Samantha went on. Accused us of stealing. Then she sold the house in a delusional state. We're afraid for her. We love her. We just want to make sure she's safe. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue that left no tear mark. James stood. Mrs. Jordan, he said mildly. Did you know the deed of the home had been in Ruth's name since 1994? She blinked. No. Jason told, we always believed. Yes or no will do. No. Did you know a bank flagged unusual activity related to Ruth's accounts within a month of her moving in with you? Her mouth tightened. No. Did you sign as a witness on a power of attorney authorizing your husband to act on his mother's behalf? I notarized what I was asked to notarize. You're not a notary, Mrs. Jordan. Of course I'm not a notary. I meant I watched. A friend notarized. She knew what she was doing. James handed a document to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. Your Honor, the notary's commission expired 3 years prior to the date on the form. There was a soft rustle across the courtroom, the sound of attention shifting. The young lawyer objected. Clerical error. Of course, James murmured. So many clerical errors, all bending the same way. They called Jason next. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I kept my hands folded and watched the boy inside him fight with the man he had become. Did your mother authorize you to transfer funds from accounts associated with the sale of her home? The young lawyer asked. He swallowed. She said she trusted me. That's not an answer, the judge said, not unkindly. He stared at his hands. No, he whispered. Not explicitly. Did you ever tell your mother that she was just someone who ate? James asked when it was his turn. Jason's head snapped up. I never said that. Samantha shifted in her chair. James lifted the blue folder, the one we had labeled history. Did you accept money for tuition, for car payments, for medical bills, for groceries during the pandemic? Jason's face crumpled. We were drowning, he said, voice small. She offered. She was generous. So she was competent enough to pay your bills, James said gently, but not competent enough to choose where she lived? The young lawyer objected. The judge sustained. But her eyes were on Jason now, like a lighthouse catching a ship too near the rocks. Then it was my turn. The oath tasted like iron on my tongue. I told the truth. Not angry, not elaborate. I kept it plain because plain is the language of a woman who has nothing left to hide. I moved in after my hip surgery, I began. I did my best. I was told I ate and didn't help. So I left. I discovered the deed was mine. The bank helped me close what needed closing. I used the proceeds to build something called Haven House. The young lawyer pounced. Ah yes, the mysterious Haven House. As if that's proof of competence. Isn't it true that you gave away your assets to unrelated parties, leaving yourself vulnerable? I smiled a little. I didn't give anything away. I invested it in a property in my own name. I live there alongside 3 other seniors, 1 widower, and a parakeet named Bluebell. We split groceries and laugh about green beans. I pay the electric bill on the 1st of every month. Do you sometimes forget where you put your keys? She pressed. Yes, I said, allowing myself the smallest laugh. And sometimes I forget the name of a neighbor's dog. It usually remembers me anyway. She tried a different tack. Did you once wander into the yard without a coat in January? Yes, I said. To watch the snow. I was wearing slippers. I stood on the mat. Samantha locked the door behind me to teach me a lesson about shoes. It was not a long lesson. A murmur. The judge glanced toward the petitioner's table. James handed me my notebook. I didn't want to open it on that stand. Felt indecent like undressing in church. But I did. I read 2 lines. Tuition. Groceries. I didn't look at Jason, but I felt his shame rise like heat. The young lawyer leaned in. Mrs. Jordan, how old are you? 78. How long were you married? 41 years. Would you say you're stubborn? Yes. Would you say you're angry? Yes, I said softly. But anger doesn't erase a signature or a deed or a brain. She blinked. I watched her regroup. No further questions. James kept his redirect short. Ruth, do you pay your bills? Yes. Do you understand your assets? Yes. Do you know the difference between help and control? I let the silence settle before I answered. Now I do. We were almost done when the judge lifted her hand. Before I take this under advisement, I have questions. Her voice was careful, balanced on the edge of something that could fall either way. Mrs. Jordan, do you have a medical evaluation attesting to your current capacity? James slid Dr. Patel's letter across. The judge read it. Her expression did not change, but her shoulders loosened almost imperceptibly. To the petitioners, she said, turning to Jason and Samantha, you allege your concern is safety. Yet your first action was not to seek conservatorship when she lived with you, but after she executed a sale. Why? Samantha's mouth tightened. We didn't think it would come to that. It came to that when she made a choice you didn't like, the judge said. Not a question. A line drawn in pencil. The young lawyer bristled. Your Honor. I know the law, the judge said mildly. And I know what it sounds like when it's asked to babysit bruised pride. She leaned back. I will review and render a decision within 7 days. I exhaled. Knees shaking, hands steady. We were almost free. Then the door at the back opened. A figure moved down the aisle, hesitant, small in a big sweatshirt 2 sizes too big. My grandson. He looked different, older in the way children get older all at once, like a storm takes their summer and leaves October in its place. Your Honor, he said, voice trembling but audible. I'm sorry. I know I wasn't called, but I have something. The judge's brows rose. Name. Evan Jordan. He swallowed. I'm 15. I used to live at. He stopped, scared of the edge of that sentence. Do you have counsel, Evan? The judge asked, gentler. No, ma'am. I found something on my tablet. A recording. From the kitchen at home. I recorded it for a school project about household soundscapes. It was supposed to be funny, pancakes, the dog, the microwave beeping. His eyes flicked to Jason, then to me. But I left it running by accident one night. The night my grandma left. The air vanished. Even the cough of an old man in the back row stopped. My skin prickled, my breath hitching high in my chest. Evan held up his tablet with hands that shook. It has what they said. About her. About locking the door. About the money. He swallowed hard. About getting rid of the problem before the holidays. Samantha paled, then flushed a furious red. Jason closed his eyes. The judge's face didn't move, but her voice did. It fell softer, steadier. Bring the device here, please. Evan walked, the tablet like a fragile sacred object in his hands. He passed me and I smelled his shampoo, cheap and citrus, the kind I used to buy in bulk when he slept over and asked for extra bubbles. He didn't look at me, not because he wouldn't but because he couldn't. Shame is heavy for the young. The clerk took the tablet and slid it to the judge. She turned the volume low. For a second, only a thin hiss filled the room, the sound of every kitchen in America when everyone has gone to bed and the refrigerator speaks to itself. Then voices. Samantha's first. Bright, brittle. She eats but doesn't help. We'll sell the place and dump her in a facility. Jason, sign the papers. I'll get Lisa to stamp it. Who cares if her commission lapsed? No one looks. Jason, smaller. Sam, maybe this is too much. Grow up, Samantha snapped. We'll lock her room tomorrow and say it's for her safety. She'll be gone by Christmas. I felt my mouth go dry. Somewhere far away a part of me, not the hurting part, not the angry part, but the mother part, wanted to reach out and cover Evan's ears. The judge listened. She did not look at anyone. The room was so still I could hear my own heart, slow and heavy, an old drum keeping time for the truth. She pressed pause. This, she said, each word a stone placed with care, will be admitted. Her gaze lifted to the petitioner's table. Jason's eyes were wet. Samantha's mouth was a hard line. No cracks, only corners. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Jordan, do you wish to add anything before I rule? I opened my mouth. The words were there, the years, the dinners, the way they looked through me like I was air. But my voice didn't find any of that. It found something smaller and truer. I am not a saint, I said. I am not a fool either. I am a woman who can choose her own door. The judge nodded once, slow, like she was telling a child yes after a long lesson. She lifted the gavel halfway and stopped, as if listening to something the rest of us couldn't hear. Very well, she began. And then from the back, a new voice burst into the stillness. Breathless. Angry. Familiar. Wait, it said. Your Honor, before you decide, there's one more thing you need to see. The entire room turned. James stiffened beside me. My hands went cold. It was Lisa, the notary, clutching a paper bag and a stack of documents and shaking hands, eyes rimmed red. She looked at Samantha, then at me, then down at the floor like it hurt to look up. I can't carry this anymore, she whispered. The judge settled back. Approach, she said. Lisa's hand shook so hard I thought the papers might fall out of her grip before she reached the bench. The bag she carried crackled with every step, like it wanted to announce her guilt louder than her voice ever could. The judge watched in silence, her gaze steady, her gavel lowered but ready. James leaned toward me, whispering under his breath. This is either salvation or chaos. Lisa stopped at the clerk's desk and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she pulled out a thin stack of documents, slid them forward, and clasped her hands together as if in prayer. The judge skimmed the first page. Her brows lifted, but she didn't speak. Instead, she motioned for Lisa. Sworn testimony or nothing, she said. Lisa swallowed hard, raised her trembling hand and swore. Her voice cracked. I notarized documents for Samantha Jordan after my commission expired. I knew it was illegal. I knew it was wrong. She pressured me. She said it was just a formality that no one would check. She said Ruth was senile. The word hit the courtroom like a slap. I wasn't senile, I said softly, my voice carrying more than I expected. Lisa's eyes flicked to me, then down. I know. You weren't. And I lied for them. I did it for the money they promised, and for the friendship I thought I had with Samantha. But it's eaten me alive. I brought the originals, Your Honor. The ones Samantha gave me. And the messages. She pulled her phone from the bag, scrolling with shaking fingers until she found the thread. She texted me what to write, how to backdate it. She said, and this is her exact line, "We'll make the old woman look incompetent. No one questions paperwork if it looks neat." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Samantha's face drained of color. Her lips pressed thin as if she might bite them bloody. Jason closed his eyes like a man begging a storm to pass over his head without hitting him. James rose slowly like a man who knew he didn't have to chase the wind. It was walking right to him. Your Honor, he said, this is fraud. Not error. Not oversight. Fraud. Against my client, against the court, against the law itself. The judge's jaw set like iron. She looked at Lisa. You understand the penalty for perjury? Lisa nodded, tears finally breaking free. Yes, Your Honor. But I'd rather carry that than carry the lie another day. The judge exhaled, the kind of exhale that sounds like judgment before words even come. She turned to Samantha. Do you wish to respond? Samantha stood, but her lawyer tugged at her sleeve. Still, Samantha's pride was louder than caution. She's lying, she snapped. She's a washed-up notary who wanted money. Jason and we were trying to protect Ruth. She twists everything. The judge's eyes sharpened. Do you deny sending those messages? Samantha's mouth opened, then closed. Her silence screamed louder than denial ever could. Jason finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Mom, I didn't know. I didn't know she went that far. And in that moment I saw the boy in him again. The boy who used to climb into my lap after nightmares. The boy who once asked if love ever ran out, and I had promised him no. But now he was a man, and his silence had written an answer for me years ago. The judge set the papers down, her voice calm but final. The evidence is clear. The petition is denied. Ruth Jordan retains full legal capacity and control of her estate. Further, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for review of possible criminal charges relating to fraudulent notarization and attempted exploitation of an elder. The gavel came down, sharp and certain. The room erupted. Lawyer voices, whispers, Samantha's sharp hiss of outrage, Jason's quiet sob. But all of it blurred for me. I sat still, my palms pressed flat to my skirt, my breath shaky but free. Evan turned toward me. His eyes were wide, wet but shining. He mouthed one word, Grandma. That was enough. When we stepped outside, the air hit me like baptism, bright, cold, real. James walked beside me, silent. Lisa trailed behind, her face pale as ash. Reporters were already gathering, but the sheriff's deputies held them back. Do you want a ride home? James asked. No, I said. I'll walk. Haven House is waiting. And as I stepped down the courthouse stairs, each step steadier than the last, I knew something was about to break wide open. Because battles like this never end with a gavel. They end when the ones who tried to silence you come knocking at your door, asking for something you're no longer willing to give. And I knew that knock was coming. The knock came 3 nights later. It was sharp, loud, angry, the kind of pounding that rattled the thin glass panes in the Haven House door. Helen shuffled into the hall with her walker, frowning. Roland muttered, "Sounds like the police come for sinners." But I knew the rhythm of that knock. I had heard it on my kitchen door years ago when Jason was late for dinner, when he wanted to be let in quickly before I could scold him. I moved to the door slowly, my bones aching but my resolve steady. When I opened it, Jason stood there, his hair uncombed, his shirt wrinkled. Behind him, Samantha, her lips pressed tight, eyes blazing like flint. "Mom," Jason said, his voice breaking already. "Please. We need to talk." "No," Samantha cut in. "We don't need to talk, we need answers. You ruined us. You made us homeless. How could you?" Her voice carried down the quiet hall. Miss B peeked from her doorway, knitting needles still in her hand. Helen shook her head slowly, disapproving but silent. I stood tall though my legs trembled. "I didn't ruin you," I said softly. "You ruined yourselves when you forgot who I was." Jason stepped forward, his hands half raised like a boy begging for forgiveness. "We lost the house. The bank account is frozen. Samantha's credit is destroyed. Evan, he doesn't understand why he can't go home." His face crumpled. "Please, Mom, just give us something back. Anything." Behind him, Samantha spat the words, "You're a selfish old witch." The room went still at her words. Even Roland from the far end of the hall muttered, "Careful, girl." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I simply turned, walked into the small living room of Haven House, and came back with a box, the same box I had kept near my chair. Inside it was the copy of the ledger, the notebook pages of every dollar, every sacrifice, every forgotten gift. I handed it to Jason. "This is what I gave you," I said. 30 years of my life. My savings. My strength. My time. You didn't lose a home. You wasted a life someone else had already built for you." Jason opened the box, his eyes scanning the pages. His lips moved as he whispered the numbers. Tuition, hospital bills, down payments, food, rent, surgeries. Every line was a memory he had never asked about, never cared to remember. His tears hit the paper before his voice did. Samantha snatched the notebook, read a page and scoffed. So what? You chose to help. That doesn't mean we owe you everything forever. I looked at her, truly looked. The pride, the bitterness, the smallness. I saw a woman who had mistaken inheritance for entitlement, generosity for weakness. And I realized finally I didn't hate her. I pitied her. You're right, I said calmly. You don't owe me everything. But you owe me respect. And you never paid it. Jason fell to his knees on the porch, the notebook clutched to his chest. Mom, please. We don't have anywhere to go. I can't lose Evan. I can't. His voice broke. I bent down, my hands trembling but firm, and touched his shoulder. You haven't lost him. You've only lost the roof you thought was yours. But roofs can be rebuilt. What you need to rebuild now is the trust of your own son. Don't come here asking for what I no longer owe you. Go build it yourself. For a long moment he stayed there, his head bowed. Samantha hissed something under her breath, but he didn't respond. Slowly, shakily he stood, clutching the notebook like it was scripture. Goodbye, Mom, he whispered. Goodbye, Jason, I said. Find the man I once believed you'd become. They left without another word. The echo of their footsteps faded down the walkway, swallowed by the night. I closed the door and with it the last thread of a life I had once lived. Inside, Haven House hummed with quiet life. Helen poured tea. Roland chopped vegetables for tomorrow's stew. Miss B.A.'s knitting needles clicked like a steady heartbeat. I walked back into the circle of warmth, into the home I had chosen, the family I had built. Not of blood but of bond. Later, as I sat by the window with my chipped teacup, I opened my husband's old notebook one last time. On the final page, beneath his handwriting that had once promised me love without end, I added my own words. They called me a burden. They called me nothing. But I was the roof above them, the bread on their table, the silence that held the family together. And when they forgot, I remembered. I built again. Not for them but for us. And I am no longer just someone who eats. I am the woman who endured, who rose, who built Haven House. I closed the book. Outside, dawn was breaking, soft, quiet, unstoppable. And for the first time in years, I knew this story wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. And every sound in the room rose like a wave about to break.